Welcome to another podcast of stories and innovations in ALS with Lisa Deegan, and I'm McFinn Levere from Everything ALS.
Welcome to Stories and Innovations in ALS, episode number 1, Misdiagnosed. My name is Lisa Deegan, and I'm joined today with McFinn Levere. We're storytellers who have both been affected by ALS. We are joined today by our team member on the Everything ALS team, Richard Sperry. So our mission at Everything ALS is to bring stories of those affected by ALS and to share their journeys with us. It's a devastating disease, and our organization is trying to leverage technology to help with a quicker diagnosis and prognosis of ALS. So Richard, we're so excited to have you as a guest today. Richard was touched by ALS for a short period of time because he was misdiagnosed with it. And turns out he actually had a different diagnosis. So I will share, I'll let Richard share that. But Richard, thank you so much for being with us here today and sharing your journey. And just really quickly, for those who don't know what ALS is, it's a progressive motor neuron disease that causes loss of all muscle control. So Richard, thanks for being here. Please start and open up sharing your journey on how ALS touched your life for a brief time.
Definitely. Thank you, Lisa. And it's great to be here today. How are you guys doing, McFinn and Lisa?
We are well. Thank you, Richard.
That is awesome. As I said, I'm thrilled to be here today to share a bit of my story and hope we have a good conversation and dialogue. So I feel like my journey is a bit of an interesting one. For me, it certainly was. It started in late 2018 when I started experiencing some first symptoms. The way they presented themselves at that time was some pain in my right shoulder. I first thought that was from working out, from doing stuff in the gym in my mid 40s that I shouldn't be doing, and just kind of muscled through it and thought I could work through the pain and eventually get better or the pain would go away. And that didn't happen. I went to see an orthopedist first, and I got a shot of cortisone in my right shoulder. That did absolutely nothing. And then at this time, the symptoms started to get worse. I started having problems with my right hand, my right wrist, was having trouble gripping things, losing a lot of strength in that right arm and right hand. Things were pretty tough. And, up until now, I've been a healthy guy and really starting to wonder, what's going on with me? What's wrong? So that was challenging.
Richard, when I lost my strength, it was because I didn't have any testosterone left. Did you have your testosterone checked?
I did eventually, McFinn. Yeah, that's a great question. I did eventually, not initially at that first stage of the symptoms I was experiencing. At that time they still thought it was some kind of sports injury. I guess though, when I didn't respond to the cortisone, the orthopedist suggested that I see a neurologist, which I did here locally where I'm located in central New Jersey. He ordered a bunch of different MRIs, every blood test under the sun. That is when I got my testosterone level checked. And everything kept coming up negative. They couldn't figure out what was going on, what was wrong with me.
Are you Googling at this point too? Are you saying, okay, here's my symptom?
Yeah.
And was ALS on your brain at all or in your mind, or were you thinking, no, this is a sports injury?
I spot on. Yeah. I mean, first I thought it was a sports injury. Then of course I became an expert in Google and WebMD and self-diagnosing and looking at YouTube videos. And, I figured if it was not a sports injury, it's going to be something weird. They'll figure it out and, I'll get a magic pill and be on my way. And, at one point in the summer of 2019, my neurologist did mention ALS, but he said, I don't think it's ALS. He just said that quickly in passing. And I said, wasn't even thinking of ALS, but all right, you don't think it's that, then, in one ear, out the other, frankly.
Did anybody ever bring up heavy metals to you?
Yep. Yep. I started seeing, in addition to my neurologist, I was just trying to get to the bottom of things. So I saw a wellness doctor here, and she brought up heavy metal toxicity, and did some blood work and did find some heavy levels of mercury in my blood. So that's kind of meant the end of tuna and swordfish for me, unfortunately, which were things that I've enjoyed over the years. I also saw a rheumatologist, wanting to get tested for something tick-borne. Here in New Jersey, big deer population, and tick-borne diseases are fairly common.
Yeah.
I also went to a chiropractor. Yeah, honestly, at this point, I was just kind of grasping for straws. My
So
neurologist.
at this point, you're 4 doctors in, right?
Oh, yeah, I've had
Four,
four or five.
and
Yeah.
are your symptoms getting worse?
Yes.
Okay.
Progressively getting worse. At this point, my right arm and hand had become almost useless. Just to put it bluntly, I was having trouble writing. Really couldn't type. I was shaving with my left hand, so I cut myself shaving in 2 months than I did in 20 years. And yeah, and then mentally it really started to take a bit of a toll. Just really struggling, wondering again, what's wrong with me? Up until now, I've been completely healthy, and no change in lifestyle. I didn't start eating poorly. I didn't stop exercising, and just kind of deterioration and muscles in my right arm, and just kind of beginning to waste away. It was scary.
Richard, I'd like to just mention something that I keep hearing. When people get a heavy metals test, they get it through their blood. My naturopath told me that it's not stored in your blood unless it's recent. It's stored in your fat and in your bones. And so I've had a number of friends get tested, and the doctors say, no, you don't have any heavy metals. But they do not test with chelation therapy. They're just testing the blood. So I just want to throw that out there, that people should question their doctors about a blood test or a chelation test to find out exactly how much of each metal that you have inside of you.
That's good info, McFinn.
That was very, very good advice, McFinn. Thank you for that.
So share with us what happened next. Like, what was the next step that got you closer to a diagnosis?
Sure. My neurologist here locally, he finally, I don't want to say threw up his hands, but he said, I'm really struggling to figure out what this is. I would like you to see a specialist, go to a teaching hospital, an academic center of excellence, where I am here in New Jersey. He suggested either Johns Hopkins in Baltimore or the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. Penn is of course a little bit closer, and I was able to get in there first. And this was about the week before Thanksgiving in 2019. So I drive down to Penn and on a Wednesday, and I see a neurologist there, obviously, and she kind of did her workup and looked at my strength, and kind of heard my story, and heard firsthand all the symptoms that I was experiencing. Didn't really say much as I'm answering the question, just kind of taking notes. And she said, well, I'd like you to come here and repeat some EMG tests. And I had those done locally, and those aren't fun for those folks who know about those. It's, yeah, getting poked and prodded.
Can you explain why? Because I've never had one. So
sure, yeah. EMG test, and I'll try to put it in layman's terms and hope I don't butcher it. It's a electrical stimulation through needles that puncture your skin to measure the muscular response to nerve stimulation. That's probably the best way I can describe it. And the actual needles themselves are pretty thin, so the puncturing of the skin is not what hurts. It's when they ask you to kind of flex your muscle and push back against the needle. That's where it gets interesting. Not a lot of fun. But I said, sure, I'll come down and repeat the test. And again, I figured they'll figure out what it is, prescribe me something, and I'll be on my way. So I was able to get in the next day for those tests. I go back down that Thursday. Walk into an exam room, see a different neurologist, and he says to me, who drove you down here? Who are you here with? And I said, that's kind of weird. I'm just here by myself. I had a suit on. I was working in the corporate world at that time. And I said, yeah, I'm just going to drive back into work after this. I came down by myself, and he just kind of shook his head. And I didn't think anything of it, and it made sense to me later on. So he and a resident together performed the EMG test. Probably took about 60, 75 minutes. I changed back into my suit from the gown, and they walked back into the exam room, and the resident, younger woman, looked like a deer in headlights, looked scared. And that's when I said, all right, this is not a great sign. Maybe I'm not going to like what they have to say here. And the doctor, he just cut right to the chase. He said, yeah, it's ALS. And, it's just, to state the obvious, that just shook me to the core. It rocked my world. I really don't remember much of the next 5 minutes of what that conversation was like.
You're probably in shock.
Yeah, totally. Just remember hearing, 3 to 5 year life expectancy, no cure, 2 approved treatments, limited efficacy. Small room. I do think I kind of was in shock, had a bit of a panic attack. I remember pacing back and forth in the room, and he said, Dr. Ellman, the woman who I'd seen the day before, she'll be in touch with you, and we'll try to get you into the ALS clinic in a few weeks. And so that was.
So
Richard, they need to really think about this, because when people are giving you a 3 to 5 year, that's out of a book. It's not you. They know the book, but they don't know you exactly. And that's what I found out when they gave me my diagnosis. It was like, I don't know if you really know. So it's really good to really not fully embrace that when another human being tells you. But thankfully, they are smart, and that's what they think. But every person is different. So,
and I think it's important to get multiple doctors to diagnose you with whatever, not even just ALS, but whatever ailment you have. Get a couple of doctors to say, yeah, this is what you have. I think that's very important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think both of you bring up a really good point. I think just about kind of patient, I guess, literacy to a certain extent, and kind of just patient advocacy and being one's own self-advocate. And, I found in the system and the healthcare system and leading up into that day, if I wasn't making these additional appointments, if I wasn't going out and trying to get other opinions and get tested for different things, that's not going to happen. And unfortunately, you do need to really, really kind of fend for yourself and stick up for yourself in this healthcare system.
You have to be your own advocate, because nobody else will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm curious how many people, just thinking, because this is very, it's a rare disease. It's considered rare.
Yep.
But how many people have been misdiagnosed? Do either of you know that? Because in just thinking, there must be some people who are misdiagnosed. And I'm just wondering, who those people are, and how many of them are out there.
I've never heard of a number of that.
Yeah.
But it's a really good thing for us to look into.
I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. I don't know a number in absolute terms, but I think of the condition that I have with multifocal motor neuropathy, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Yeah. I think 10 to 15% of MMN patients originally are initially diagnosed with ALS.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and
it mocks the symptoms mock each other, right? Okay, or mimic.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'll come to how the diagnosis was corrected in a couple of minutes, but I think what's really important is the period right after my ALS misdiagnosis. That really, for me, was obviously a very dark time, and I felt alone, and I felt very isolated. I felt scared, frankly, and that's with the support of a loving and amazing family that I have here. And that day when I was diagnosed, it was a pretty surreal drive home, up I-95, the big highway here on the East Coast, and my wife's a preschool teacher, and even though this was the week before Thanksgiving, there was some nice weather here in New Jersey at that time, and she was out on the playground with the kids she teaches, and I just drove right to her school, and she saw me get out of the car, and she could just see the look on my face, and she could tell that something was very, very wrong. And yeah, I mean, that just kind of unleashed a really, really rough period for my family and I. And there's great resources, an organization, Hope Loves Company, that I'm on the board of, that provides emotional support for families, and specifically children with loved ones affected by ALS. But still, I mean, just the feeling of getting that diagnosis, and the helplessness and the isolation. And that's, why I think some of the work that we're doing at Everything ALS is so meaningful, and anything that we can do to provide support and comfort for the community and the patients and the caregivers, I think is critically important.
Yeah. And it's so good, Richard, that it's happened now, because for me, 15 years ago, I had nowhere to turn. There wasn't an organization like this. And for you to have come out of this and then come and join our organization, I can't thank you enough, because misdiagnosis and diagnosis, they're both extremely painful, deadly, confusing, and it's really nice to have somebody to talk with. And that's why us having over 350 people sometimes to talk to about these things. Richard, your story is medicine, so continue on.
No, certainly. Yeah. And we're a family here at Everything ALS, and we have our extended family every second Wednesday, and it's awesome. So yeah. And as I started to say, the next couple of months were rough. It's, really thinking about, okay, how do I deal with this? How do I prepare for the inevitable? Thankfully I had a very supportive employer that was allowing me to take all the time that I needed to focus on treatment and help prepare financially. The next big milestone was going up to Mass General to get a second opinion, as most ALS patients are encouraged to do, just based on the difficulties in diagnosing that we're talking about here. The diagnosis was confirmed there. They did, though, talk to me about the platform trial and research that they're doing there.
Yeah. They're doing a great job.
Yeah. Tremendous job.
Yeah.
Talked to me about stem cell therapy and being done in South Korea as an option. So I walked away from that appointment feeling not optimistic, but at least, okay, there's some things I can do here. There's some things that I can try. And I think that was very important. I'm really appreciative to the team there at MGH for kind of providing that positivity to me. That was important to my family and I. Yeah.
That sounds like you went to a very large organization, because I went to a very small neurology office, and they didn't give me options. They only gave me 18 months. And so I think things are really evolving over the last 15 years, but I'm really happy that they gave you some things to chew on.
Well, in even big organizations, my brother went to Stanford right here in Silicon Valley, and this was not many years ago. And they said, get your affairs in order. That's what Stanford told him. So, thank God we do have places like MGH that have this platform trial where they're providing several treatments and options for patients. This is the way of the future, and they've paved that, and thank God for them. But it's scary to think that going to Stanford, and I don't want to knock on them because I love Stanford, but he was told, sorry, get your affairs in order.
Yeah.
And
it's a great point, Lisa. And it kind of comes back to the theme of patient advocacy and taking control, being proactive.
Yes.
And that's not easy. at any point in our healthcare system. It's certainly not easy when you get a diagnosis like ALS, but I think, frankly, it is incumbent upon people, incumbent upon patients and their families to really be advocates for themselves and
100%.
do research and identify what options are out there. Because, I think, like you're saying, McFinn, and you're saying, Lisa, it's easy to just kind of hear that there's no options and hear that go home and get your affairs in order and take that as gospel. And we can't do that.
Well, I'm glad neither of you did.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So then the next step in my journey was a trip out to central Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota, the Mayo Clinic. And frankly, after visiting Penn and Mass General, I was close to canceling that appointment. I hope any Minnesotans listening won't get offended, but I said, do I really need to go out to central Minnesota in January? After I'd been to two academic centers of excellence here on the East Coast. And but I kept the appointment at my sister's urging, and I'm glad I did. So she and I traveled out there together, and similar start to our visit there, meeting with the neurologist, retelling my journey, my symptoms. And they, of course, wanted to do their own EMG tests. So I buckled up for more poking and prodding. Yeah. And I did that on the charm. Yeah, exactly. Did that on the early morning of day 2 there. And that was on all 4 limbs. The tests were performed, and this part's neat to me, by Dr. Nathan Staff, who Lisa, as you know, and McFinn, as well, spoke on one of our webinars a couple of months ago, and I was able to introduce him, and that was a nice opportunity for me. So anyway, my sister and I are walking back to our hotel, and my cell phone rings, and I see it's the neurologist's office. And a member of her staff said, Dr. Maloney would like to see you now if you're able to come back to the office. And this was late morning, and I had an appointment scheduled for 4:00 that afternoon. And I said, okay, I guess she must have had a change in her schedule and wants to see me now. So my sister and I trek back over there and get escorted down to her office and walk in, and she says, I'm gonna cut to the chase. We looked at your EMG test results, and I don't think it's ALS. And
I need to take a deep breath.
Yeah. you and me both. It's still, I've told the story a bunch of times. Obviously, it's still very raw and emotional for me. And my sister started crying immediately, and maybe I'm a little more jaded or cynical. I asked the doctor, I said, okay, kind of walk me through what's going on and what you're seeing. And she said, we saw a conduction block in one of your nerves, and that's not typical with a patient with ALS. Okay. I think it's an autoimmune condition called multifocal motor neuropathy. That's a mouthful. It's referred to as MMN, which is easier. That's how I've been referring to it since then. And then what she said next was interesting, and it really ties back into some of the work that we're trying to solve for here at Everything ALS. And she said, just like ALS, there's no diagnostic test, there's no biomarker for this. I can't draw blood and confirm it one way or another. What I'm going to suggest you do is go home and start on some IV antibody therapy, something called intravenous immunoglobulin, IVIG. And if you respond to it, that is essentially going to eliminate the ALS diagnosis. So I stayed out in Minnesota for a few more days. They wanted to do a lumbar puncture and a couple more MRIs and some more blood work, and then headed home. Late February 2020, I was able to start the IVIG infusions here locally, back in my neurologist's office, just about 10 minutes from my house. Went in for 5 consecutive days, probably about 2 or 3 hours of infusion each day. Painless, just sit there with an IV in, and thankfully no side effects. And then a few days later, I wake up lying in bed with my wife, and I start to move my hand, and I haven't been able to do that for 15 months. And
Richard,
can't even imagine.
And that's, that's when I knew, and when I really begin to felt good about things.
This reminds me of being in a plane that almost crashes, like literally where you're like, I'm dying and there's nothing I can do. And then the plane lands and you get out and you're like, I just want to kiss the ground.
Yeah.
I just want to I bet that's somewhat, maybe a little bit how you felt. That's just what's going through my head.
Yeah, no, exactly. I just felt extremely grateful. I felt extremely lucky. I just felt extremely thankful for getting the right diagnosis, for having access to the right treatment. Really for a second, what I thought was a second chance. I guess what stuck with me though, and it's kind of led me to where I am today, is it was a life-changing experience for me. Receiving that diagnosis of a terminal illness, experiencing walking in the shoes of an ALS patient for 3-4 months, and just really seeing, for lack of a better term, just what a brutal disease it is, and how taxing it is on patients, how taxing it is on caregivers, how it can be financially crippling, how much opportunity there is, I think, to improve the resources that are available for patients and their families, how much opportunities there is to.
What do you think that it did for your spiritual life?
That's a great question, McFinn. I think it really caused me to think about what's important in life, and I know that sounds cliche. I was really think on a bit of a treadmill in my life that wasn't the most healthy one, in terms of working for a great company, but I think focusing way too much on that job, not taking care of myself mentally, not being focused enough on my family and my relationship with my wife and my daughters, and just being very open and honest with you all about this. And that was a big part of my journey, and really thinking about how I could use this experience to make some positive changes in my life, to work on things that are going to have a lot more meaning and a lot more impact. And again, that's in no way to disparage my prior career and my 18 years at that company. It was a great place, but I just wanted to be a lot more present, have stronger relationships with those close to me, and again, be involved in things that are going to have a lasting impact, and hopefully a lot more meaning for folks. So it was a real journey for me, frankly, in the kind of the middle of last year, a positive one. I joke with folks, I'm probably the only person that had a better 2020 than 2019.
Well, when faced with the walls of death, you really learn what you're all about. And it sounds like you've really done that work. And we're so lucky to have you because of your genuine passion for having this purpose and making a difference. And so we love that and we welcome that. So we're just so lucky to have you on board, because you are like such a good soul, and you want to help others, and we love that. So I'm sorry you had to go through the ringer to be able to work with us.
Yeah,
but
something great came out of that experience, and I think we're a team of great souls. And so then really, I'll say third quarter, September 2020, really started thinking about, okay, how can I kind of take all these learnings and this growth journey that I'm on and make some really significant changes in my life, and thought about a career change. Through the organization I mentioned, Hope Loves Company, which coincidentally is headquartered here in my hometown. Jody O'Donnell Ames, the woman who founded that, was of great support to my wife and sister after my misdiagnosis. And I reached out to her and said, hey, kind of here's where I am. I'm thinking about making a big change. I want to do something that's going to be involved ALS, and I'm not sure what that could look like, but do you have any thoughts? And can you connect me with anyone in your network? So she put me in touch with Deb Fabricator on our team, and Deb's like, oh wow, I know this guy you have to meet, this organization that just got off the ground, and I just started working with this guy Murgesh. I'm like, okay, whatever. He's like, she's like, you guys are gonna hit it off. You guys are gonna hit it off. I'm like, sure, I'll jump on a Zoom with him and see what it's all about. So we got on a Zoom call, Deb and Murgesh and Indu and I, and yeah, we just kind of hit it off from the get go. And I just love their energy and I love their passion, and they're just asking good questions, just really inquisitive and really interested in me and my experience. And yeah, it was just kind of like, I felt like it was meant to be. And over the course of the next few months, we just talked about different things we could potentially collaborate on and work on. And
then when did you ever meet? When did you meet him?
Yeah, interestingly enough, not until a couple of weeks ago. So
and tell us the story. How did that happen?
Yeah, so officially joined the Everything ALS team at the end of February, and just like most folks in the world, our interactions have been Zoom based and productive ones, I think, and great to get to know the team over Zoom. But yeah, I with the exception of Deb and Sylvia, just on a couple of occasions, I hadn't met anybody on the team. I don't think anybody had met each other. So
until last
week, there were 10 of us.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right.
And till a couple of weeks ago, we all got together in California and in the Valley, and on Lisa, your parents' beautiful property outside of Santa Cruz. And I've told people that was a really meaningful couple of days for me, and a really awesome couple of days. Because
it was for me too, for all of us, because never being together physically, you can guess a lot about people, but when we got together physically, we melted together.
Yep.
And we laughed so much that we even missed dinner one night. So
exactly. And I know it sounds so cliche, and you say, it's like we've known each other for years, but it truly felt that way. Like it
was special.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was. Well, we're so lucky to have you on the team. Do you want to tell us what your focus is with Everything ALS and what you're going to be working on?
Yeah, so I alluded to my 18-year career a couple times in the company I worked for, and that company was Novo Nordisk, which people may know is a pretty large pharmaceutical company focused primarily on diabetes and obesity. My career there provided me with a pretty deep network and some pretty strong relationships within the pharmaceutical industry. Over the years, a lot of my contacts moved around and under a lot of different companies. So as we focus our efforts on the search for a digital biomarker and try to get more research collaborations off the ground, try to get some interest from pharma companies in participating in those collaborations and supporting our work with startups, tapping into that network and trying to connect us and introduce us with different pharma companies and kind of kick those conversations off. That's really been the primary focus of mine. And it's great. It's kind of leveraging my skill set, my experience and some relationships that I have, but in a really new and different fun way, and one that I think is going to pay dividends and eventually have a pretty big impact for the patient community.
Well, we're like we both said, both McFinn and I were super lucky to have you, and we love that you're on our team, and you do bring a lot of expertise in that pharmaceutical industry, and that that's what we're targeting at Everything ALS as well, in addition to all of our research. So partnering with as many pharmaceuticals with our program. So we're so lucky to have you.
And I'm lucky to have you guys and lucky to be part of this team. And walking away from the trip a couple of weeks ago, just something stuck out with me with every member on the team. And Lisa, it's this constant smile I always see on your face and positivity that you just radiate. And McFinn, you're probably the most genuine, authentic person that I've met, and just so true to yourself. And I love that. So
thank you.
Yeah, well, Richard, there's so much more to this organization than us just finding the cure. It's really us finding each other and being that unit. And actually, each of us is a reward for each other because each of us are givers. And so I'd just like to say thank you for joining with us. Thank you for your experience, because nobody knows how it is until they've been there.
Yep.
Amen.
And
Exactly.
so with that, we just want to say that there is a lot in life to be grateful for, and we are looking for all of those people who would like to be grateful with us, because we have a mission and we want to share that mission. So thank you for joining us in our community, our exploration. We're digging deep into those affected by ALS. Actually, we're working tirelessly. So your stories matter so much to us. So please keep sharing. Continue to help us further with our research. ALS is a mystery. Each one of you is a piece of the puzzle. If you know anyone who suffers from ALS, or if you're a researcher or a neurologist, or if you're from the pharma or the biotech companies working in the ALS arena, we would love to hear from you. So for more information, please visit everythingals.org. Another podcast from the heart from Everything ALS, folks. A fine day to you. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you with our next podcast. It will be interesting. Be sure to be looking for us.
Yep.
A fine
Tune
day.
in. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Great to be here
McFinn.
today.
Okay. Bye,
All right.
everyone. Thanks for joining us in our journey of exploration and digging deep into the souls of those affected by ALS and those working tirelessly to help put an end to this devastating disease. Your stories and your work matter so much to us and to so many. Keep sharing and continuing to help further the research in ALS so we don't have to see another person suffer. Do you know anyone who's suffering from ALS? Are you a researcher, a neurologist, pharma, or biotech company working in the ALS arena? If so, we'd love to hear from you. For more information, please visit us at info@everythingals. Thank you, folks. See you in our next podcast. Don't miss it. It's going to be exciting.